Thank you, David and Vinciane, for your wonderful hospitality. And I'm charmed to be in your midst. I've met as many of you as I could, read about as many as you I could, and I'm very much looking forward to the rest of the time together with you. What I want to share with you today is, as David said, a program that is deceptively simple. It's a school-based program where we build empathy in children, and as a result, we find that aggression goes down, all different kinds of aggression, including bullying, but more importantly, that their social and emotional understanding comes up. And it's quite sweet the way His Holiness speaks about roots of empathy. He says, aggression down, good things up. And he refers to roots of empathy as the milk of compassion. And Paul Gilbert's remarks about suffering. A year ago now, January, the Dalai Lama held a small meeting in New Delhi. And he invited some people to come and talk to him about how do we reduce suffering in the world. And I think it was probably some of the most profound discussion that I had been privy to. But I can tell you, next to that, the most profound discussions that I had over suffering was with the mothers and children whose lives were blighted by violence. Women and children who were living in abusive, violent homes, babies who were incubated in violence. And the reason that I decided to start Roots of Empathy 17 years ago was that I realized that there was a generational impact of violence and poor parenting. And that if we wanted to put a halt to it, we had to start with the children. And where are the children? Well, in developed countries, they all go to school, thank goodness. And if you want to change the future, and our mission is to build a more caring, peaceful, and civil society by raising levels of empathy in children, you have to go to school. So, 17 years ago, it was difficult to explain to schools why is empathy essential to our future. So, by starting out in the most violent, drug-ridden, poverty settings in Toronto, we were able to demonstrate, first of all, with kindergarten children, that you could tip the ecology of the classroom. You could create a supportive learning environment where children developed a different kind of literacy, emotional literacy. That the little children who were in these two schools that were in very troubled communities, they didn't have ready access to understanding their feelings, having the names of their feelings, or communicating to others, so that frustration and disappointment and hurt feelings were meted out in anger, and that there was emotional shrapnel in every single classroom, and every single classroom has an armada of broken hearts. And you cannot teach a child who is in emotional pain. There is no learning happening when a child is sad, sick, or lonely. And let me promise you, we have a pandemic of loneliness in children. And it's not just the little children who are living in disaster zones, it's all of our children. We haven't organized the landscape of childhood very well. The landscape has changed, but children's irreducible needs have not changed. They still need love, paramount. They need time. You can't buy them off. Their needs are very simple, but they're not being met. And what Roots of Empathy tries to do is to use a parent and an infant as an attachment relationship model, which is where you have the most pure example of empathy. And to bring that parent and infant into a classroom, to have the children sit around a green blanket, to train somebody, to help the children be keen observers. Paul Ekman would love how the children are brilliant at observing and talking about the children's emotional expressions, the tone of their voice also. They become real detectives and reporters about what they think the baby is feeling. And then they learn the words for the feeling, so they're developing their emotional vocabulary. And they're also developing the capacity to be conversant with their feelings in a non-threatening way, because when you're a child and you're learning about perspective taking, how somebody else feels, it's usually because you're in trouble. How do you think your brother's going to feel after you've bitten him? So we know if we're stressed and nervous, worried about something, we're not learning. So what the Roots of Empathy program did was open children up to be learning. And this they've looked at, and Sue Carter is going to be looking from the University of Chicago, is going to be looking at levels of oxytocin in the children in the Roots of Empathy programs, and also measuring how cortisol levels come down. Because when you do discuss negative emotion, you immediately reduce the feeling, the stress, so the cortisol comes down. So this emotional literacy that children develop in the Roots of Empathy class, it's really the foundational language, it's universal, and it's really our Esperanto. We have looked in the world and tried to find ways to come together. How can we end marginalization? How is it that we dehumanize people and hate them based on their differences? So how can we identify our sameness? On what basis can we find one another in the world? And basically, the connective tissue of humankind is our emotions. And I think the little ones in the Roots of Empathy program, and they're not all so little, we have 4 different strands of curriculum from kindergarten up to the end of primary school. So it's developmentally appropriate the way we work with the children, and it's not all about the baby. Quite honestly, the baby and the parent are there for 1/3 of the program. And that's the experiential learning, the biological embedding of experience. And then there's the pre-planning visit from an instructor, and then there's a reflective visit from an instructor a week after. So the children have quite a comprehensive year-long program of 27 classes. And they have many, many opportunities through the curriculum to practice these things that they're learning about. But I have to say the creativity of the children surpasses any curriculum we have written. And also the creativity of the classroom teacher who sits around the green blanket with the children, observing them, and quite honestly, what happens that allows the children to reinvent themselves is that in school, typically, teachers have to ask children what they know, and they're sort of being tested all the time, and that's the nature of the beast. But in the Roots of Empathy class, we ask them what they think, and what they think other people think. And we discuss metacognition. How do you think you learn? And how do you think your friend learns compared to how do you learn? And how can you help your friend learn better? And how can you ask for help when you know that this is how you learn? And we ask children what they feel. And the honesty and trust of little children, when they feel that they're in a safe space, that nobody is going to be writing notes and telling on them, and that the children in the class won't laugh at them, we're humbled by what the children say. At the end of the year, they make wishes for their baby. And their wishes bring us all to tears. The Roots of Empathy family is presented with a wishing tree of what the children have wished for this little baby. And it should be on policy tables, because they wish not only what the parent might wish, but they wish to prevent the child from suffering. So they say, well, I hope baby Billy never gets asthma. Or I hope baby Billy gets a daddy. Or I hope baby Billy's daddy gets out of jail. Or I hope baby Billy always has a friend. I hope baby Billy isn't stupid at school. All of the things that little children, also we hear unfortunately a lot, I hope baby Billy isn't bullied. So I guess the whole concept of giving children voice and helping children develop resilience. One of the ways we do this is we give them complete control. We do not praise them. And that sounds maybe a strange thing to say, but the reason we don't praise children is that we don't rob them of making their own decisions about what was a good answer or what was a good question. We let them decide. And we don't manipulate them with praise. See how nicely James is sitting? So everybody immediately hates James and has the sense that, if I really want to get the attention of Miss, I better sit like James. It's a completely praise-junkie, false, superficial, destructive way for children to be brought up. So if you decide to sit up straight, fine. And if you want the children to sit up straight, for God's sake, ask them to. But don't manipulate them into it. So what happens when you remove praise, the children who never contribute anything suddenly realize that, you know what? You get listened to here and nobody says it's good or bad. So we really encourage intrinsic motivation, and it is the best pill for encouraging children to take risks in learning, to speak out loud. And it allows the children to reinvent who everyone thinks they are. Because the child who's learning English, or the child who's not very good at reading, might have a learning disability, or the child is new to the class and doesn't feel they fit in, or the child who has a stutter or a stammer. These children speak up. The autistic children participate at a rate that they don't in any other situation. And the gorgeous thing is, the children who are deemed to be different in some way are invited to birthday parties. And when you're a child, and the only birthday party you ever get invited to is a cousin's, you know what marginalization is. And it starts in the classroom. It's a microcosm of society. And if we can tip the ecology of the classroom that kindness is a given, we have a hope for a future that will be more caring, peaceful, and civil. And if we don't start with the children, we're going to be a failed society. We may be worried about the economy. If you look at the recent American election, thank God it turned out as it did. But, what was the discourse? The discourse was mainly the economy. But if we don't have a citizenry that has the capacity to care about those we can't see, to care about the generations to come, if we don't cultivate that, if we don't harvest humanity instead of just the greenbacks, we're going to be in trouble. So Roots of Empathy is a lot of fun, and I'll just show you a little bit about it. The empathy deficit is real. Sarah Conrath has done some disturbing studies on the decline in empathy. I won't depress you. Why promote empathy in children? Well, it is key to any relationship. Do you know that so often failed relationships, people will say, oh, she just didn't understand me, couldn't get me, there was no real communication. What happens with the children who develop empathy in the Roots of Empathy program, they feel listened to and heard, like Christine's doctors. They have the capacity to really breathe with one lung with their friends. So it builds all these things, and without question, the abusive parents that I worked with, they could not get under the skin of their baby. To be an effective parent, to truly love, you have to be able to get under the skin of the person you love, whether it's your lover or your baby. And that's empathy. So empathy, I think, is the secret sauce to a happy life and to a productive society. This is a video that I'm going to show you. It's less than 1 minute, because you're probably thinking, what on earth is that woman talking about, a baby in a classroom? So it just shows you Baby May. Now, Baby May is part Japanese. Baby May's mother taught the children that when she feeds Baby May, she bows to Baby May, and after Baby May has finished her pablum or whatever, Baby May bows to Mom. And we sing the baby in, and the reason we sing the baby in, singing is a choral soup of emotional connection. When we sing together, we are together. The singing isn't great, it's just normal singing. It's not about quality, it's about participation. And the children, every child touches Baby May. So this happens at the beginning, and every child looks at Baby May, and to be seen by a baby is to be really seen. And then you'll see a little sequence where it's called 18 questions. In the space of, I've only shown you some of it, but in the space of 4 minutes in this classroom, 18 questions were asked, and most of them were rhetorical. Because to be a citizen, you have to learn how to ask a question. You cannot defend the vulnerable unless you can challenge injustice by asking a question. How come? Why is this happening? So if we want children who will stand up instead of standing by, they have to be able to find their voice and ask a question. And so much of school is about answering questions that you're nervous about. So let's see how we're going to get... You'll also see here...
How are you today? Hello, Baby May, and how are you? How are you? How are you? Hello, Baby May, and how are you? How are you today? Yes, let's see if she keeps trying. Does anybody remember when she was learning to roll over? What? She kept trying. Does that get her? Okay.
So the idea is that the attachment relationship you saw there when Baby May took the second spill immediately turns around to Mommy. Am I okay, or should I be upset about this? And Mommy rubs her chin and says, go back to work. So the children, you could see the empathic concern. One little boy went like this. They are cheering for Baby May. They have found the humanity. They are learning to understand her intention. They're learning to understand her feeling, and they're making a huge impact on how little Baby May seizes the world. So this idea of being able to build children who understand one another. I'm not even going to show you the rest of these because in 1 minute I can't really. But I want to show you how the program is different from what we do in school. You could not teach empathy with flashcards the way we teach things in school. In school we ask questions like, if Johnny has 3 apples and Amelia takes 2, well, normally we'd say, how many? But we don't say that in Roots of Empathy. Because if Johnny isn't feeling too good, there's no learning happening, you might as well pack it up. So very quickly, these are the goals of the program, and I'd like to just finish off by saying the research on Roots of Empathy has been one of the things that I have been absolutely strong on. We have 12 years of research, randomized trials, longitudinal studies. The impact is huge on the children in terms of reducing aggression, and it lasts over time. So we're so pleased that we've just launched here in England, and the House of Lords is having a big shindig on Monday, which I think is a scream. But I'm very happy to have shared a little bit of what we're trying to do here, and I plan to learn a lot about what you all are doing, because we're working in the same vineyard. And my sense of it is, there's no point in crying for cabbage if you've planted corn. Thank you.